So, welcome to another Coatings and Coffee, or in my instance, tea. And thank you for the mug, by the way, Jason.
No problem.
So, what have we got in store for you today? Well, I guess you can probably guess from behind me. We're going to talk about sandpaper. So, if you'd like to introduce yourself, sir, to the audience.
Hi, my name's Jason. I'm an application engineer for 3M Abrasive Systems division.
Thank you. So, already, may I say, mind blown. So we got an array of sandpapers here. So it's very important in the world of paint that the preparation is key, right? Yeah. You know, I could be rude, I'm not going to be, but let's call it a rock. If you paint a rock, it still looks like a rock. It's just shiny. So the preparation to get it smooth needs to be good. But what I've noticed, Jace, is you've got an array of sandpapers here, so maybe you could explain, because I'm old school, and this is what I know and remember. Yeah. But you've obviously got some differences here.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll just run through these. So this is your traditional sort of paper abrasive. So all your coatings and the mineral on the top surface of the paper. The backing has got a loop material on there, so it can attach to one of these backup pads.
Okay.
And it's like a hook and loop
system. It's like the Velcro type of.
Yeah. And this is a general purpose sort of abrasive, and this is one, you know, it's been around for 100 years basically, paper. Yeah. That's how it all started.
But I guess evolution comes, right, and we make different things. So what we got?
We improve things and make products for different sort of applications, etc. So this is a film back product. So very robust, very strong. Again, it's got a loop system on the back for attachment to the tools.
And would that be a reason for me to use it? The strength? I'm thinking different substrates and maybe tearing or something.
Yeah. So anywhere where you've got burrs, you know, sort of metal burrs or GRP, anything fresh out of the mould that's sharp, this will be a lot more robust than a paper disc and withstand sort of tearing, especially on the edges and that sort of stuff.
I think we've all done that. It's in one of these haven't we? And you fly off across the workshop as you go.
Exactly. So the other thing about films is that you can use them wet. They stand wet sanding much better than paper, obviously.
Yeah.
And the other thing that they are really good for. Sorry.
No. It's just because you're going to make me ask questions as you do it.
The other thing they're very good for is sanding very flat surfaces, because obviously a film is inherently flatter than paper on a micro level. Yeah,
so if you put that, like the profile under a microscope, that would be... So you just said something about, and I'm probably going off piste with all my questions, so I apologise. You just talked about water. What is the relevance of water in sanding? Why? I mean, I guess is it a lubricant? Why do people? What's your view on water, and should you use it, and why is it used?
Well, a lot of people don't like to use it because it's messy.
Yeah.
And the second thing is all the effluents that come from whatever you're sanding that are running off the job. They've got to really be collected, because it's full of all that dust that you're sanding, but in liquid form.
Yeah.
And you can't really put that down general drains. So there's a couple of reasons, but. It does make abrasives last a long time, because you're getting rid of all the cut material all the time. So if you do sand with these things wet, it keeps the abrasive working very, very well.
Yeah.
Keeps all the abrasive particles clean.
Yeah.
And it gives you a long life and a very aggressive cut. So it's got advantages but disadvantages.
Yeah, but there's also, just for the guys watching, there's going to be sort of substrates that you sand that we wouldn't recommend to be wet either. So you wouldn't want to be using a wet cut disc on a fairing compound or a filler. So I guess be mindful of that. But it's good to know. Yeah. But okay, so that's just two, and I've got another two on here. So you've got some differences again here.
Yeah, and then we've got a couple of mesh abrasives here. And the advantage of mesh abrasives is that you can see straight through them, obviously. So really high level of dust extraction capable through this, obviously, and it's minerals coated onto this surface, but you've got extraction through every square inch of the product, really.
Yeah. So. Right. I'm doing my thing. You've got me going here. No, because I'm looking. So old school, me, old man. Everyone knows I'm an old man. I've got P grit on this, but then on this one I've got no P reference, but I've got a plus. Okay, let's go. So for my benefit, because I actually don't know, What is P rating?
So P grading is it's against a system called FIPA, which is a sort of a regulation for European producers of abrasives.
Yeah.
And it really means it's sort of saying, you know, the mineral is to a certain standard of size per the grit size on here. So P180, for instance, on this disc would have a sort of a profile of the mineral size that it's meant to be.
And there's whether it's a myth or not, is that true that it's an average? So you could have some that are a little bit coarser and...
Exactly. So it's a distribution of sizes, but the peak of it, where the majority of the mineral is around the grit that it says on the back of the paper. You'll get finer grits and you'll get coarser grits.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, if we go to the plus, so what's the reason for a plus?
So the plus grading on this particular disc, we're not allowed to use a P grading. So it's nominally it's going to be 240 grit, so it's going to be the same sort of scratch and performance, the same sort of stock removal, but we can't use the P grading because it's a man-made mineral that is on the... Man-made, yeah. So conventional minerals are made in furnaces and crushed and sieved to get you all the different grades out. So they'll come from one crushing process. But we actually, at 3M and other companies, actually are starting to manufacture minerals now, and they'll all be the same size.
I was about to ask, so that basically means everything on there is the same because it's man-made.
Yeah.
The other stuff is natural and milled, and there can be differences.
And it'll start from a certain grit and end at another. But these are all when you use a plus rating on here because of the man-made mineral, but they will all be the same size. Now they'll break down during use, Richard. You know, so obviously all minerals break down during use. So you'll get a sort of a slightly coarser scratch when you start with a disc, and that'll get slightly finer as you get to the end of the life.
So it's like if this is an abrasive, it's getting worn down. So this cut. So it's knowing when the paper's, sorry to use the term, but dead, I guess. Is that?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a way of knowing that, or is it? For me, it's a feel. I guess you know when it's stopped cutting.
Exactly. You can see when it's stopping to do the job, and sometimes you'll feel that through the tool as well when it's sort of maybe 50-60% of its life.
But as a visual reference, I'm sort of looking round. The guys, I can't pan the camera around, but we've got a lot around us, and I'm seeing over in the corner here. You've got guide coats. So I've always thought that they were a good idea because you can see that you've got one of my concerns is always that if you use a very coarse paper and then a finer one on top, you can still have the valley of the coarse. But obviously using guide coats, those sort of things allow you to see that you've got rid of the scratch.
The deep scratches, exactly. So guide coats, they come in powder form. You can use spray-on guide coats as well. The other way of doing it is sort of marker pens with alcohol wipes, and they really get into the very fine sort of scratches. But you're exactly right. Guide coat is a great way of sort of seeing where you're up to on the sanding job, and it tells you when you've got out all of those deep scratches from the previous step.
I just say to everyone, be careful of the one that we picked up on there and doing an alcohol wipe is, depending on what your substrate is, you may not want to use a guide coat as such. So just check with your product supplier that it's right. So okay, that's making sense. So that's effectively man-made, the plus grade, which is and I guess what you see is what you get. Every pad's going to be identical. There's not going to be that rogue piece of grit or anything in there. So I think it's fair to say if you're going top end finishes, you want to be using something that's man-made rather than
you'll set off with a more consistent sort of distribution of mineral grains in there, which has got to be better for your finish of the.
So just watch out, guys. The P grade and the plus grade, the cut profile are the same from my understanding, but one is man-made and probably a little bit more refined than the other. So for me the finished work, I'm going to talk about paint, of course I am. The finished work is always really important about the prep, and paint doesn't like edges. We all know that. You paint, it pulls away from an edge, and even a coarse scratch profile can cause that. It can stop the post flow of our product. So You talk about, there was a term there earlier, stock removal. Can you just mean what you mean by that? You talked about high stock. I'm guessing you're meaning.
So we're talking about the sort of coarse end of things, really, or so stock removal is a phrase that we use, which means how much material is it cutting from the job that you're.
So it's what you're sanding
so
off,
it's either
what you're removing.
Primers,
Okay.
high build.
Because we use specifications, or in the technical data sheets we give recommendations of certain grades.
Yeah.
Because what we've seen in the past, I'm going to use the term dieback, and there's a question on this. And dieback is when the paint eventually settles to its natural state. It's sort of, we're going from liquid to cured, and you start to see underlying sort of maybe imperfections or bits. So a couple of questions from me, and again, could be a myth, but we talk about hand sand to machine sand, that the hand sand is coarser with the same paper than a machine. Is there any relevance to that?
It's probably true, I would say, when you're using abrasives on a dual action sander or a random orbital sander. You're using quite a large area there, so and the action of the sander itself is rotary, but then it's got these small orbits within it as well. And that is really to hide scratches. It makes the scratch pattern really, really small.
This is we call them little pigtails. Is that gives that little
that's
circle?
What can give you pigtails, is because all of these tools are rotary, and that's why you would get something like that. But getting back to the difference between mechanical and hand sanding, when you're hand sanding, often you're just going back and forth on the job, and if you're actually using it by hand without a block at all, the actual pressure that you're actually putting onto that abrasive is much, much higher than it is when you're using an area that's something like this. So you can get a deeper scratch, basically. So
where we see people where they do the detail area, there's too much man or woman on a very small area going in one direction.
One direction, yeah.
So when I know, and this doesn't refer to bright work and wood, because we always say sand in the direction of the grain, but on substrates, I'm guessing you don't just want up and down, you want side to side.
Yeah.
Because the DA, right, that's doing this, and it's got an orbit.
And it's got the orbit within it, yeah. And the orbit is what you see on the back of the handle. So we were talking about that earlier. That on the back of the handle.
That's right. You were saying the colour of the in this guy's range, the colour of the handle on the DA refers to the orbit on the sander. So you can get a 2.5, a 5, and an 8 and a 10.
Yeah.
And the higher number, the coarser, and you would use that on maybe fillers.
Yeah.
But on the top coats, you want the very small orbit.
You want the fine one. Yes. You'd start off, if you're roughing out and doing high stock removal, high material removal, you'd want your 10s and your 8s. But then you'd come through 5mm in the mid grades, and then when you get down to the very fine grades, 320 and onwards, or even 240 and onwards, sometimes you'd want a 2.5mm orbit sander. Okay,
so you've talked types of sanders. You've even talked about the DA. So then I've got another question, because I'm cruel and I found one of these in your stores. Interface pads. When would you use it? Why do we have an interface pad? Again, something that I'm just was handed as an apprentice and say use this, and it's like, okay, but why?
Yeah. Okay, so an interface pad is a very soft foam pad, again with the hook and loop system on both sides, so it can go in between the backup pad and the actual abrasive itself.
Yeah.
But really, when you want to use an interface pad, there's a couple of reasons. The first one really is that it'll give you a finer scratch pattern than using just a backup pad, but also it allows you in a 5 or a 10mm thick sort of format. It gives you a better finish over contoured surfaces as well, so you're not going to get really high pressure on the higher points of that contour that would burn through your paint.
So is this going back to your pressure thing you're talking about by hand sanding?
Yeah.
So maybe okay, so I get it, but so why a 5 and a 10, and when would you use the 5 against a 10 on the depth?
And it's all down to personal sort of taste, really. If you've got a very highly contoured surface, you'd go for a 10mm.
Yeah.
If it's
when you say contour, this is lots of shape and movement.
Lots of shape. Yeah. If you're using very flat surfaces, you might just go for a sort of a soft backup pad.
Guys, you can't, people can't see this, but this one's solid. I can't bend it. This one is it's got a hard back effectively, but it's got a soft. So that will I guess it just moves to the contour of the shape.
Yeah, so you'd want to use a really firm sort of backup pad when you're using your very coarse grits, 40 grit down to probably 120. And then you'd want to go for a medium backup pad or a soft backup pad. You'd go from there onwards. Okay. But the other reason people use interfaces, which we didn't pick up on earlier, Richard, was that changing these backup pads over on a DA is a bit of a fiddly job.
Yeah.
It takes a couple of minutes, and you wouldn't want to be doing it all day.
Yeah.
So the other reason people often use these interface pads is the fact that when you want to turn this quite hard, firm backup pad into something much softer for your fine
rather
grades,
than having to spin it off and change it,
you can just put one of these on.
So effectively, that hard one with that does a similar job to this, is what you're saying. Okay.
Exactly. So people want to do that way more than they would change over. I mean, the best way to do it really is you have a couple of sanders.
Yeah.
You have two sanders, one with a hard and one with a soft. I mean, however, most people have one.
Everyone's going to know this. You have to grip onto these, because as soon as you try and tear the paper off, the interface pad comes off, and you've thrown it down the scaffold, and then you have to go down 3 flights of stairs. But that's good. Okay, so that makes sense. So lots of paper. So hand and machine, there is there is an element of truth in the myth, but it's mainly because they're always going in the same direction, probably putting too much man or woman behind it, and a lot of pressure.
Probably high pressure in the same direction.
But the scratch profile will remain the same, but it's probably that you're tramlining it a little bit.
And the eye can pick out those sort of scratches. The whole ethos of the DA, the dual action, is the fact that just disguises the scratches.
Yeah, it puts it in different directions.
You cannot see that when you've top coated the paint by eye.
Okay, so I'm just going to sort of go back over it, guys, just so we talked about types of paper. We've got I call it sandpaper, but that's probably the wrong term, because it's not, is it? The original term is paper from this, but now we're into films.
Light abrasives.
And is that what it is?
That's what I'd call it.
So people will know it as light abrasives, but that makes sense. Technology and things change. We talked about the P grade and the plus grade, although and please correct me, Jace, if I'm wrong, although they refer to the same sort of cut, the plus grade is man-made, and I can't get the right terminology, but it's more uniform, I guess. Everything's the same.
Yeah, and it should be, but literally the FIPA regulation means that you can't use a P on anything that's got man-made material.
But you also talked about the film being a lot flatter than the paper. You can't really see that, but on the profile, and I can completely understand that from the structure that you see on here.
It's just the fact that with a film, it's actually extruded. So a film is manufactured by an extrusion die, and it's just super flat.
Super flat. So again, films on high-end finished top coats seem to be a sensible thing.
Very fine grades,
interface pad, understanding of that. That's great. So why you would use it? Again. Then I think for me, one of the other things I was going to talk about, you talked about the sort of grades, and it's worth people knowing that as a paint manufacturer, all paint manufacturers do this, they will recommend a certain grade, but that grade is for the next process. So always be mindful of that. If you try and skip any grades, you're going to get telegraphing and print through. So, I think you do sort of operating procedures. I can't remember your
SOP. Standard operating process.
But those are a good thing, right? Procedure. So and that's sort of what you see in our specifications as well.
So if you do try and skip lots of steps, you'll just have to work a lot harder in those final stages to get rid of that scratch, and you could see it. So it's a good idea to follow that sequence through. With the right sort of time on each grade,
and from our point of view as a paint manufacturer, that dieback may take a period of time. The paint will cross-link and cure, and if you paint it yesterday and you look at it today, that you may not be seeing that imperfection in the sanding until a few weeks' time. So we don't want your customer at the end having issues. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank you, Jace, for using the mug. Thank you for that. For your time, and I think there's going to be more to talk about. We'll probably come back. I think we've got tapes and sundries, and there's all sorts we can talk about.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I hope that's been interesting to everyone, and we will catch you on the next one.
See you again.
Thank you.